So this doesn't sound good. The big one could be even bigger. The San Andreas Fault in California could unleash an earthquake unlike any seen before. That is what a new study says that has looked at the devastating 7.7 Myanmar earthquake that just happened. You've probably seen my coverage of this. Whoa. And when I read this study, it becomes clear, yes, we have a problem in California because the fault that triggered the Myanmar earthquake is similar to the San Andreas Fault. So everything we knew about the San Andreas Fault, how it's locked and loaded, where it might rupture, we can fold this together and throw it over our shoulders. Right now, so far, they were saying, well, it's locked and loaded in the southern area. That's why these Salton Sea earthquakes were so concerning. The southern area of the fault is most likely to rupture, but they thought it's unlikely that the whole thing might rupture. But now there's new evidence, guys, and if you hear that, it'll blow your mind. Again, I have to say, it's kind of become a slogan with these earthquakes. It's groundbreaking. So listen to this. They have studied the Myanmar earthquake. We're dealing with a strike-slip fault. The San Andreas Fault is also a strike-slip fault. San Andreas Fault has been made infamous by the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. So strike-slip means two faults are moving past each other horizontally with no vertical movement. And strike-slip faults tend to occur along the boundaries of plates that are sliding past each other. Scientists have told us, and they have been long warning, that we could see another San Andreas Fault massive earthquake at some point and that it's somewhat overdue. But what this new study now suggests is kind of crazy. But the thing is, fault lines do not behave the same. So it doesn't mean that what the San Andreas Fault did in 1906, that it's doing the exact same thing again. And Myanmar comes into play, and that is very, very interesting. And if you want to know what happened in Myanmar, this is the first time that it was caught on camera how a strike-slip fault moves. Because if we say it's grinding past each other, you really have to imagine that one person is standing here, the other is here, and then the strike-slip fault moves. And then, poof! Suddenly, they're further away from each other. And that's what happened in Myanmar, and it was caught by our surveillance camera. My subscribers, you've probably seen that video. This is amazing. So I'll show you this video again. You see the gate, and we have to probably repeat it because everyone looks at the concrete breaking in front of the gate. And I saw it first, and I was like, yeah, that's interesting, but it's not that groundbreaking. Then I realized, oh, in the right corner there is a tower collapsing. But then guys, after I played it quite a few times, look at what's happening here on the right. You see, and then I was wondering, how could I not see that? You see the land like that was connected, moving away from each other substantially. So things that were on this side and things that are on this side moving away quite substantially. So I hope you caught it. If not, press pause and replay it. I'm also showing it to you again in slow motion so that you can see it, and I'll point it out because this is absolutely crazy. This is the force that we're dealing with here. And imagine now, okay, this is happening in a smaller portion of a fault, not with the whole fault. But what if it is happening in a longer portion of the fault? Because that was the problem in Myanmar. They never thought that it would do that it would rupture in such a long area of the Myanmar fault. And The study that we want to look at today of the March 7.7 Myanmar earthquake has found that, first of all, strike-slip faults do not necessarily repeat past behavior, because that's what that fault there did, the Sagaing fault. And that means that the San Andreas fault could unleash a bigger quake than any that has been seen before. And that means the next big earthquake in California has the potential to be larger than anything else. That's what the scientists are pretty bluntly throwing in the room and are pointing out. That devastating Myanmar earthquake, guys, has ended over 5,000 people. We probably remember the pictures of the high-rises swaying around, pools on top of tall high-rising buildings floating over. Scary pictures there, but there were a lot of structures that collapsed. You remember probably that high-rise that was under construction that really collapsed like a planned explosion collapse. But also poor people, poor structures collapsed. Absolute devastating, widespread destruction from this earthquake. So what scientists found out about that earthquake, and I have to use the word superhighway, they found that the fault that is responsible for that devastation is an earthquake superhighway. That's how they call it. It's the Sagaing fault. And it has ruptured across a larger area. They were completely surprised about that. And it has ruptured in places that they wouldn't have expected at all based on previous events. So it caught them by surprise. We know these fault lines, and it's pretty obvious if you look at aerial pictures of the San Andreas fault, they're fractures in the Earth's crust, and in many cases you see them. And then stress can build up along these faults until eventually the fault suddenly ruptures and causes an earthquake. The stress is getting too high, it's locked and loaded, and poof, it slips. And this Sagaing fault and the San Andreas fault unfortunately are similar. So what happened in Myanmar could help researchers to better understand what might happen in California. So hopefully it's not catching them by surprise anymore. But what could happen in California is really, really scary. So the study shows that future earthquakes might not simply repeat past known earthquakes. So just to say, yeah, we've seen what happened in San Francisco, we've upgraded all buildings, we've upgraded codes, yada, yada, yada. A professor of geology and mechanical civil engineering at Caltech, Jean-Philippe Avouac, has said in a statement, and I quote this, "Successive ruptures of a given fault, even as simple as the Sagaing fault or San Andreas fault, can be very different and can release even more than the deficit of slip since the last event." And the problem is, we have a study that just told us almost half of California's faults, including the San Andreas fault, are overdue for earthquakes. And then at the Cascadia fault that will also hit Northern California, that is also overdue. The San Andreas fault, and here come the numbers, is the longest fault in California, and it stretches about 746 miles. That's roughly 1,200 kilometers from the state's south at the Salton Sea to its north. It's like off the coast of Mendocino. And in 1906, a devastating earthquake happened in the northern section of the fault, caused a devastating magnitude 7.9 earthquake, and has ended more than 3,000 people. We have way more people living there now. Don't forget about that. And we know that earthquakes are notoriously unpredictable, and geologists have long warned that the San Andreas fault will produce another massive earthquake at some point. And for instance, The area that's nearest to Los Angeles has a 60% chance of experiencing a magnitude 6.7 or greater in the next 30 years, and it will be amplified because of that plain area that LA is located in. The Sagaing Fault is a little longer than the San Andreas Fault. It's 870 miles long, and that's roughly 1,400 kilometers. It's similar to the San Andreas Fault in the fact that they are both very long, they're very straight, and they're strike-slip faults, which means the rocks slide horizontally. There's really little to no vertical movement, not like with a subduction zone that we have with the Cascadia Fault. And yes, geologists were expecting that the Sagaing Fault would slip somewhere along its extent. Specifically, they thought that the rupture would take place across a 190-mile long, that's a 300-kilometer section of the fault where no large earthquakes had occurred since 1839. So they thought this is locked and loaded, like they're thinking with the San Andreas Fault in the Salton Sea area at the southern end of the San Andreas Fault. So this expectation, and here it gets interesting, was based on a hypothesis that is called the seismic gap. Basically, it anticipates that a stuck section of a fault where there hasn't been any movement for a quite long time, where it's like locked and loaded, that's what they're saying, will slip to catch up where it was, according to the statement. But, however, we have to say, in the case of the Sagaing Fault, the slip occurred in a huge area along a stretch of more than 310 miles. That's 500 kilometers. That's almost to say, for example, if you're in Europe, drive across whole Germany from Munich to the coast almost. So that means, yeah, it caught up to place where it was before and then some. How did researchers find out about this? They used a special technique to correlate satellite images before and after each event that had occurred previously on the Sagaing Fault. And those images have revealed that after the quake, the eastern portion of the fault moved south by 10 feet, 3 meters. That's what you've seen in the video, relative to the western side. The scientists say that the imaging technique that they use can be used to help improve future earthquake models. We can't say predictions. That's unfortunately still not working. So the earthquake turned out to be an ideal case to apply image correlation methods like these techniques to compare images before and after a geological event. Scientists say, quote, they allow us to measure ground displacements at the fault, where the alternative method like the radar interferometry is blind due to a phenomenon like decorrelation, that's a process to decouple signals, and limited sensitivity to north-south displacements. So what they're basically saying in this study, the Myanmar earthquake caught them by surprise with where it happened, but also that such a long area of the fault was triggered. And now imagine that we see a long area of the San Andreas Fault slip. That will unleash a huge amount of energy. That will lead to a huge displacement. And the problem is many areas are densely populated that are close to the San Andreas Fault. Remember the video that I showed you? You see that 10 feet displacement. If that ruptures through a subdivision or through LA, that's not good, guys. So we should keep that in mind, that this could happen, such a large displacement over a very long stretch of the fault, because the fault is so straight, so it seems to be easier for the fault to do that. And maybe it will happen in an area of surprise. Maybe it will not happen in the south that they say is locked and loaded. If that happens right in LA and stretching 500 kilometers, 400 miles, bad. So I thought you should know about this, guys. I will keep you updated if there's new studies out. In the meantime, really check out the videos in the end screen. It's crazy what is going on, guys. And I hope that you are already a subscriber. If not, please like, share, subscribe. If you want to support my channel and my work, fill me up with coffee. Check the link in the description, buymeacoffee.com/silky. Click the join button for behind the scene videos, a supporting membership. Thank you for your supers. Hello to everyone who's new. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe and be prepared. And that's all we can do, right? See you in the next one. Click here. Bye.